Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I'm back here with Starters Order 7. I've decided that I'm probably going to start with a new Let's Play where we tone the difficulty down a little bit, which is not the same way as I would have played Starters Order 6, and I'll talk about that a little bit here and now, and maybe get some whining out of the way. And I think maybe whining's the wrong term. Maybe legitimate gripes. I think a lot of, I don't know, older players who might not be huge super fans of Starters Order 7. So there's a difference between I wouldn't say you're a casual player if you're playing Starters Orders in the first place. You've got some sort of love of horse racing or whatever. Starters Orders is a simulation-heavy game that, well, most casual players are going to be a little bit put off by. So let's say there's the fanatical clique group that's closely tied to the Starters Orders organization. They're probably made up of the same people that take part in the league. They run races against each other, and there's nothing wrong with this community. It's a great community. They're not bad people. However, at the same time, they're going to be much more forgiving of the Starters Orders development team. Well, I shouldn't say team. Starters Orders is really, like many indie games, a one-person thing. And I often try to take it easy on one-person developers. I have a lot of respect for them. People like Sammy Marin with Unreal World, who's been developing Unreal World for, since the beginning of time. It's the longest continually developed game in the Guinness Book of World Records, and that's pretty awesome. And he did it all for free for the longest time. He just gave the game away. Super amazing. But that type of thing is not to be expected in the real world. Most people, when they're developing a game, they're attempting to make some sort of cash. And that's to be understood. Developers deserve to eat. It is, after all, their job. But there comes times when some things are just, well, glaringly not really acceptable, even if it's from a small one-man team. And I'm just going to say this one time in this video, because I don't want to beat this dead horse. I don't want to beat up on a single person developer, but I just want to point this out at this stage in time. I went in and I played a season of Starters Order 7, and it was very easy to pick up, very easy to learn, because, well, I really wasn't learning. I really wasn't picking anything up, because it was really the exact same game from Starters Order 6. But one of the main differences that you see is on this screen. You see the Starters Orders 7. This screen is almost the same thing, with the exception is that there used to be a 6 there instead of a 7, and now there's a 7. The start menu here is the same thing. I mean, when we press, say, start a new game or continue to save game here, we come to a screen that's pretty much the exact same thing. I mean, when I click this, load or start a new game here, it's the exact same way I would Starters Order 6. There's minor graphical changes here. So you got these news stories and things down here. You have the talking robot voice. Those are the changes that somebody will immediately notice in Starters Order 7. But is the talking robot voice and this little news story stuff down here, does it make for an amazing change? Maybe, but you could have probably done all this in a DLC. I mean, all the files underneath haven't changed. You've turned around and sold a brand new game, and 70 to 80% of the core files are the exact same thing as they were in the game before it. You just kind of added some extra files to create some more graphics. That's a DLC. That's adding an addition to. That's not creating a new game. There's nothing new about this interface. There's no changes here. Even so, you're going to notice a change here from my Let's Play. When I click on breeding and I go to my horse, and I bring up horse stats, you're going to notice that I now have some sort of graphical representation of how good my horse is that's easier to look at. You see this here? That is a mod. This mod wasn't created for this game. This mod was created for games before it. And it just so happens to work perfectly with this game. Why? Because this game and the game before it share the exact same files down to the file name. And so all that this mod does is it replaces one graphical file for another. It's one of the safest mods in the world. No matter what changes with this game, it won't break this game. And the level of... So, when you're looking at the fact that you can now clearly see 25%, 50%, 75% of the bar, and you can see clear physical breakdowns, so that you can now know that, hey, look, this horse's extra speed rating is 50%. It's as clear as a bell. But without this, you had to guess. You had to eyeball it. And eyeballing it just doesn't really work. Eyeballing it is very frustrating. And for something so simple, this mod is literally pasting 3 tiny graphics files into a directory to replace 3 tiny graphics files that were there before. This is like the poster child of why I am upset with this developer. Because there's no reason that he couldn't have simply improved these 3 graphics files, because it's clear as the sun and the moon in the sky that the players like having this clearly easy to see graphics of these horse stats to be able to tell if it's at 50% or not. And this simple improvement that would have taken him all of 5 seconds to have put in the base game, so that people like me wouldn't have to go and change and actually mod this. Not that it's difficult, but why should I have to mod this in Starters Orders 7 when it was modded in Starters Orders 6? Why didn't the developer simply say, wow, great mod, everyone's using it, look at that, it's a no-brainer, I should put this in Starters Over 7 so that people don't have to go about the process of having to put this mod in. It's a no-brainer. It's like, what are you doing? This is exactly what the developer should have done. This tiny little graphical change would have been a huge welcome addition to Starters Order 7. But what? He couldn't take the time to change these 3 files to be a clear improvement? I mean, nothing about the game has changed. What did he do to this game? Well, supposedly horse breeding is more realistic. Supposedly, well, we noticed from our first playthrough that the game is much harder on the back end side. So it's harder to win races. It's harder to your finances on normal difficulty are much tougher to deal with. You, all in all, the simulator portion of the game has become tougher. And I don't mind simulation. A lot of the times I think simulation makes for good fun in a game. But sometimes simulation goes too far, and sometimes it takes away the fun in the game. And that's what I feel has happened between Starter's Order 6 and Starter's Order 7, is that the very minute changes that you can't even recognize have actually made Starter's Order 7 feel like it's, well, less fun. So, with that being said, oddly, even though there's now a robot voice that calls the horse races, well, at least calls the horse races and tells it stops. So eventually you get to the point when you're playing that, I don't know, the game gets confused and stops calling races. Which is fine with me because the robot voice after a while gets a bit annoying anyway. So it's not a big loss. But that the robot voice is one of the actual major changes of the game. So one of the major changes of the game with the robot voice calling the horse races is that that's one of the things you paid $35 for. You know, most of this game hasn't changed. If you have Starter Order 6, why spend $35 to play Starters Over 7 so that a robot voice can call the game for you, so that you can get these little news reports down at the bottom of the screen for stuff that you probably don't even care about anyway? So sure, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that are interested in the betting portion of the game, but typically when you take part in the betting portion of the game, it's just to try to finance the main part of the game. You know, the betting portion of the game is kind of a side hobby. It's not the primary focus, and those news reels and things like that, they don't really serve the primary portion of the game. They serve that side betting portion of the game. And so has the game really improved? Has it become amazingly better? I don't see it. But then I haven't gotten involved in the horse breeding. The horse breeding is supposedly where most of the effort was put into for the Starter's Order 7 versus Starter's Order 6. But the problem with that is probably most of that stuff is happening on the back end and is not actually visible by the naked eye. We don't see the results of the horse breeding per se. Well, we do, in that the horses are going to come out with certain stats better or worse than they used to before. But when one looks at the game and one sees, and one, I don't know, stares at the same game that they played before. You know, I played Starter's Order 6 for a long time, and I couldn't wait for Starter's Order 7 because, god damn it, I wanted to look at something new. And when I go and spend $35 and I end up looking at the same game, literally, I'm looking at the same game, the same graphics, the same horses, the same race. It's frustrating to say the least. I mean, it's like there's been no visual improvement. There's been no graphical improvement. I mean, it's not like the graphics on this game are amazing. The graphics from this game are antiquated and dated and are... And I'm not even a person that really cares about graphics that much. You know, I'll play Dwarf Fortress, and I'll play Unreal World, and I'll play all these games that don't require high-end graphics because, you know, the main portion of the game is fun. And that's actually part of the reason why I play Starter's Order 6 too, is because, you know, graphics isn't that important in Starter's Order 6. Underlying was fun. And Starter's Order 7... is the same game. So, you know, technically it's still a fun game, but if you're an owner of Starter's Order 6 and you now buy Starter's Order 7, it can definitely feel like you might have been ripped off, like you might have just gotten yourself gypped. I mean, sure, this might be wonderful income for the developer so that he can continue to develop this series and make it better, but at the same time, it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel kosher. It feels like I've been scammed here, like I've been ripped off, like I've been sold the same product I already owned with some minor graphical changes. It's a bit, well, I don't know exactly what to say, because I do like the game as a whole, and I don't want to come off sounding too harsh, but it doesn't feel kosher. It feels, for a $35 price tag, to have so little visual changes from the one game to the other, and for it to play pretty much the exact same way, except with a little bit harder difficulty. You know, the back end of the game, the part that you don't see, the mysteriousness, the number crunching by the computer and in the code, that stuff seems to have changed, but we can't physically see that with our eyes. We don't see those changes, but you know, those changes have been made, and maybe not for the better, because if you're playing a horse racing game, you want to win the race every now and then, right? You don't want to just lose the race every single time. What fun is watching your horse being blown away on the racetrack, race after race after race? It's not exactly the most fun adventure. And while I understand that you want to try to create as realistic of an experience as possible, and that this is a simulator, and simulators strived for realism, the normal consumer might not see the amazing realism changes. They might only feel the realism changes, and that feeling for them might not equal fun. Anyway, that is my kind of take on Starters Orders 7 from a quasi review standpoint. So this video is gonna be kind of my review of Starters Orders 7. I have to admit, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in Starters Orders 7 because it feels like I've been ripped off. It feels like I've been sold the same game, just repackaged with a new name on it. And that's not kosher. However, as this is going to be a review video, if you're watching this video and you haven't played a Starters Orders game, you know, you're coming into the franchise for the first time, then I most definitely recommend this game for you if you're interested in horse racing. If you're interested in becoming a trainer, of creating a horse racing business, this is a great game for you. However, if you're someone who's already been part of this series and you're not part of the clique, you're kind of an outsider from the clique in that you're not a mod on the Starters Orders forum. You don't take part in the day-to-day Starters Orders multiplayer leagues. You you bought the game, you played it for a few months, you highly enjoyed it, then you shelved it, didn't really take part in the forum, didn't really get to know the developer, didn't really, you know, you're not part of that whole, I don't know, development family, if you will, because, there's a lot of cool guys like Chris Orme. Chris Orme is a YouTuber here, on YouTube that does Starters Orders videos, and they're very good videos. I would recommend everyone to check him out. But he's also a mod on that forum. He's also, a friend of the developer. And when you become part of that clique, you're going to be much more forgiving of the developer when he resells the game to you. You're not going to come on here and feel as ripped off because you don't have those close... you're going to feel ripped off if you don't have those close ties to the developer. If you're buying the game just to be a game and not taking part in the more fanatical Starters Orders community that race against each other with their horses and stuff like that, and there's nothing to say that community is bad. That community is a great community. It's just that I'm not part of that, and there's probably other people like me that are not a part of that liked Starters Orders 6 or Starters Orders 5 or any of the Starters Orders series, and finds it very disappointing that Starters Orders 7 and Starters Orders 6 are pretty much clones of each other, and almost feels like we've been tricked into buying the same game again, and doesn't have the fanatical love of the series, if you will. I mean, I don't want the series to do bad. I would love for there to be a Starters Orders 8, but you could sure the hell bet that if there's a Starters Orders 8, I'm going to demand there to be a lot more fucking changes to it than what happened between Starters Orders 6 and Starters Orders 7, because it's the same freaking game. It's just not kosher. So... I don't know if this makes sense to you. I don't know if this just sounds like I'm being a whiner here, but I don't begrudge a small developer. Mark with Starters Orders has created a great game here, and he's been at it for some time. This is the 7th in the series. But at the same time, game development isn't cheap. He does need his money, but I think $35 for a game that really is the exact same game as it was before isn't maybe the most reasonable or responsible way to get your money. Maybe try a Patreon and ask your fans who love the game to, I don't know, fund some development of the game instead of doing what very much feels like you're tricking people into getting this next game they've been waiting for, and then they discover it's the same fucking game. It's just not very cool. But yeah, this horse is dead. I've beaten this horse, which is kind of comical since this is a review about a horse racing game, and beating the dead horse is a kind of the peak of irony for this conversation. I should probably cut it short here. So if you're new to Starters Orders, I definitely recommend Starters Orders 7. It's as good a place as any to jump in and play the game. As I've been saying, Starters Orders 7 is pretty much the same game as Starters Orders 6, so why not get 7 instead of 6? It's going to be the same game no matter which one you buy. Maybe get 6 because it might be cheaper at this point. There's that. It is, again, it's a good game if you've never played the series before. Go get it. If you're not a fanatic of the series, you don't care if the series lives or dies, but you already own Starters Order 6 and you actually want a different game, then you might not want to get this game. This might be a game you want to stay clear of. or if you're really a big fanatic of the game and you want Starters Orders series to keep continuing, keep moving forward, then buy this game and support the developer. But yeah, I think that should sum up this video. Anyway, I am James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all. Peace.